NFS Speed Unbound is the king of versatility, particularly when it comes to the handling. Before we get into the subject of today's video, I just want to say a huge thank you for 200 subscribers. I never thought I'd hit that number, especially as I don't upload that consistently. To my subscribers that have stuck around despite the lack of uploads, thank you so much for sticking around. It's so much appreciated. And to my new subscribers, I'm really glad you enjoy my content. I appreciate you guys so much, so thank you. Now on to the video. What I mean by versatility is that you're free to drive however you want, whether you want to choose a drift focused handling style or a grip focused handling style. Whereas in many of the games that came before it, you were basically forced to adopt a drift handling style due to either the poor handling in the game or a lack of choice. I'm going to use 2015 as a reference point because it is the first game in this current generation of Need for Speed games. NFS Speed Unbound is one of my absolute favourite Need for Speed games that I've ever played since I started playing in the underground days, and there are several reasons for that, one of which is the handling. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say it's absolutely perfect because it isn't, and there's definitely some tweaks here and there that could be made, but in my opinion, it has some of the best handling of any Need for Speed ever, especially in this generation. And that's not even touching on the Kaizen handling, which, although yes, it is only available on selected cars, it almost makes Unbound's handling perfection. So let's get into what makes Unbound's handling so much better than its predecessors. Freedom of choice. It's simple. Now, as I mentioned earlier, in Need for Speed Unbound, you're free to drive in whatever handling style you want, whether that's grip, drift, or a bit of both. By that, I mean that both styles of driving are actually viable, and it isn't just one that's vastly effective while the other is completely useless, which has been the case particularly for Need for Speed 2015 and Need for Speed Payback. I will say that 2015 was probably one of, if not the worst offender when it came to the drift versus grip handling, because grip was so awful in that game, just so much understeer, and it generally just wasn't viable at all, and you were basically forced to tune your car for drift due to how bad it was. You could argue it was the worst handling in any Need for Speed game ever. I will say that the silver lining for 2015 was that the drift handling was actually very good and quite enjoyable, arguably the best in the franchise. I mean, it had to be, considering that's basically all we could do. Taking a look at Need for Speed Payback, although the general handling was better than 2015, you were still forced to adopt a drift focused handling style, but this time you didn't even have a choice in the matter. At least in 2015 you could generally tune it to drift or grip and then tinker with it how you see fit, whereas in Payback you couldn't actually tinker with anything to do with handling aside from these three live tuning options here, and in fact that's all there is to do with handling in the whole game. You can't even change the type of tyres on your car, which is crazy. So it's quite clear to see that this game is heavily geared towards drift. To be honest, this was probably for the best considering how grip turned out in the previous game, which of course was 2015. But it would have been nice to see how grip handling would have fared in Payback, because I actually found the handling in this game to be kind of boring personally. There just wasn't much variation, and I found a lot of the cars just seemed to handle quite similarly. Now let's move on to Need for Speed Heat, and I will say Heat's handling was a massive step in the right direction from Payback in 2015. You had a choice of whether you wanted your car to grip or drift based on the parts you put on it, and most importantly, both grip and drift handling were actually good, meaning both handling styles were actually viable and you could enjoy driving in both drift and grip. Now of course the grip handling wasn't perfect, it still felt a little heavy and understeery at times no matter what car you were using, and you could never really fully commit to grip handling due to having to choose either gas or brake tap to drift, but you could never turn it off fully like you can in Need for Speed Unbound. However, up to that point, it was definitely the best handling of a Need for Speed game since 2015. Speaking of Unbound, let's speak on that one now. As I said earlier, I think Unbound has some of the best handling of any Need for Speed ever, and I think part of that definitely comes down to having a choice between grip or drift and being able to fully commit to either of them. It helps that both handling styles are really good in the game, so no matter what your preference, you can still enjoy driving and racing. What I love most about the handling, particularly the grip handling, is that it's really tight and responsive on most cars, and as a grip racer, it feels so good when you get that perfect line in the corners, and generally speaking, grip handling feels really smooth. Like, I feel like they really nailed the grip handling with Need for Speed Unbound for sure. I do think the drift handling is really good as well. You know, the drifting is smooth and easy to control in most cars. I will admit though, I wouldn't say it's perfect, and I still think 2015 has it beat when it comes to the best drift handling. It's worth noting that when I'm talking about drift handling, I mean strictly in a race setting and not in separate drift modes, because if that was the case, Drift Pro would easily be on top. So what do you guys think of the handling in Need for Speed Unbound? Do you agree that it has some of the best handling in any Need for Speed game ever? If not, which games do you think are better, and which do you think is the best in terms of handling? Also, which Need for Speed do you think has the worst handling? I look forward to hearing all your thoughts in the comments, so be sure to drop them down below. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave a like, it's much appreciated. Subscribe if you're new and you do enjoy my content. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.